that I think is going to revolutionize the way we use energy in this country. And a number of major companies are already employing the Bloom box. You may have seen a segment on 60 Minutes a few months ago where he described this really, I think, probably life-changing opportunity for us as we consume energy in the United States. And it's very much of an honor to have you here, Dr. Sridhar, and to have Kai Riesdahl, who I actually listen to every afternoon on Marketplace. Thank you for being here, and
Pleasure.
Take it away. Okay.
Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Kitty, for getting everybody seated and started. This session is, if we do it right, going to start as a conversation about fuel cells and then evolve into a discussion of energy technology, sustainability, the politico-economic environment in which KR's inventions will come to the marketplace, and I think lead us to some sort of mutual and shared understanding of what's at risk here and why what he has in that little box right there is so important. Very briefly, the biographical sketch of Dr. Sridhar goes something like this. From academia, aerospace and mechanical engineering, the University of Arizona, where he ran the Space Technologies Lab, where his job was, I kid you not, to investigate ways to sustain life on Mars. Which gets us to his current occupation and his current interest, which is fuel cell technology, which is, I hope, why many of you are here. Kara, thank you so much for your time. And I'll throw you the very basic question, because if not in the audience, then certainly your humble moderator needs the tutorial on fuel cells. What are they, how do they work, and why are they important?
Good morning, and Kai, thank you. And thanks to the Aspen Institute. Fuel cells, the easiest way to explain them is generally the only way we know how to produce electricity is to start with a fuel. A fuel basically has chemical energy. You burn that fuel with air to create heat. Combustion, fire, heat. That heat, you raise water to steam, and that steam then runs a big paddle wheel called a turbine. And that turbine is surrounded on all sides by copper coils, big copper wires. And from those copper wires come electricity. How does that happen? Energy, as you all know, can neither be created nor destroyed. It can just be converted from one form to another. That's a basic law of science. So what happens is chemical energy becomes heat energy by the fire, becomes mechanical energy when the steam runs the turbine, it's rotating, and then becomes electrical energy. Whether you start with coal, whether you start with oil, whether you start with natural gas, or nuclear power. Even nuclear power, the heat is created without the combustion, everything else is the same. This is what happens to create electricity. And this process of doing that, you can only do it in very large scale, not for your home, not for a building like this, but for a city, for a very large 500, 600 megawatts. You're talking about roughly 500,000 to 600,000 homes, if you want to think about it. That much electricity is how you generate and scale. None of us want something like that in our backyard. So you have poles and wires called the electric grid that bring the electricity from where you generate it to the homes where it needs to go. So that's the background of how we are used to using electricity. What's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with this picture is you're trying to go to South Africa to watch the World Cup final, and you want to change your currency from US dollars to the local currency. Instead of doing that directly, you're stopping on the way in London and changing it to pounds. One more hop somewhere in Europe, you're changing your dollars that you converted to pounds now to euros. You keep doing that until you get to where you need to go. You all know that some amount of money gets taken away at every step, and you end up with very little. This is what happens in science. When energy gets converted from one form to another, something gets taken out, and very little is given to you at the very end of it. Highly inefficient process. So if you want to convert chemical energy, now the fuel, to electricity in a single step with no middlemen, there is a way of doing that without combustion, without fire, and fuel cell is a way to do it. What is a fuel cell? The easiest way to think about it is like a battery. In your battery, There's a chemical reaction that's going on, and that chemical reaction gives you electrons to either run your watch or light a light bulb. Except the chemicals run out, and if it's a primary battery, you have to throw the battery away and put a new battery in, or it's a rechargeable battery, which is only a storage device. It's not generating electricity. You take the electricity, you store it. When you want to use it, you use it. That's what you have in your cell phone or your iPad or any of those things. In a fuel cell, a similar chemical reaction occurs, except there's a little pipe. And through that pipe, you can keep supplying fuel. It can take the air, the oxygen from the air. They both react chemically without creating a fire or a combustion. And in that process, it releases electrons. And that electron is electricity, which comes directly to you. And you can make it in small sizes, which means you don't need to put it very far away. You can put it right next to where you use. So what have you done? You've eliminated all the middlemen. You go from chemical energy to electrical energy, and that's a fuel cell.
So we've been hearing about fuel cells mostly in this country in the past in terms of hydrogen, right? That little pipe leading in there, you get some really pure hydrogen, you poke it in there, you get oxygen on the other side, and boom, you have chemical energy and then electricity from that. Seems to me that like every 5 years in this country, somebody says, oh, I've got the fuel cell solution, right?
Yes.
So how are you different?
Good. So that also goes into why we kept quiet for a long time and came out and talked about it only when our customers said our solution was working. It is my co-founder has 50 years of experience in fuel cells. He built the very first fuel cell that was supposed to go on the Gemini spacecraft. And it flew on the Gemini spacecraft. Apollo used it. So fuel cell as a technology has existed, like you currently pointed out, for about 5 decades. So how come then we don't see it?
Where you been?
Yeah, exactly. And so the issue is one of commercialization. Can you make it affordable enough? Can you make it reliable enough? And can you offer a solution which has a value proposition to the customer? Those fuel cells, those legacy fuel cells, as I would like to call them, are low-temperature fuel cells. And the low-temperature fuel cells have two problems with it. One is the fuel you use in there. The fuel is hydrogen. Let me stop for a moment. Hydrogen is not a fuel.
It's a noble gas, right? Who remembers chemistry?
Why is hydrogen not a fuel? You don't have hydrogen wells. You don't have hydrogen unless you're in the sun where you have nuclear fusion and it's generating hydrogen, in which case you don't need hydrogen. There's no other place where hydrogen is a fuel. Hydrogen is just a storage media. You need to put energy to break water up to create hydrogen, or you need to break natural gas to remove the hydrogen from it and use hydrogen. So a hydrogen fuel cell is sort of a hybrid between a real fuel cell and a battery, because instead of storing all the power in a battery, you're storing hydrogen, which you got from somewhere else. And hydrogen has a couple problems, transportation and storage. As you know, hydrogen is the lightest gas. It's got an atomic weight of 1, which means for some amount of mass of hydrogen that you need an extremely large volume of it. That's why hydrogen balloons float, right? So it's very difficult to keep it in some significant volume in your car or in your home or anywhere else, number one. It's very expensive to make. And if you keep it under high pressure or at very low temperature, it's 20 degree Kelvin. It's very cold to keep liquid hydrogen, is the way you want to think about it. And then what you need to do is, the other thing you can do is, once you get that hydrogen, for that fuel cell to work, that fuel cell requires platinum. Platinum, as you know, is a noble metal. And why is it called a noble metal? There's a very limited quantity of this material on the planet. So imagine suddenly there's a rush of these fuel cells and we want to make more. Do you think the cost of platinum will go up or down? Okay, so it's a bad idea to try to invent a new technology to solve a scale problem where inherent material in it, its cost will actually go up with volume and not down with volume. Everything we have seen in the semiconductor world, things come down.
So Bloom Energy has been around, 8 years now? Plus or minus?
Plus
right?
minus.
Okay. None of us really have heard of you until 60 Minutes took a tour of your plant in February. How have you cracked the code? How have you solved the platinum thing and the hydrogen problem?
So I'm going to hold up a marketing example of a fuel cell. This is a fuel cell, what I'm holding in my hand. Okay, it's what you see is a thin white ceramic. Okay, and this particular ceramic is found in beach sand in multiple continents. It is an inexpensive material, available in abundance.
Yeah.
And painted on either side is a green paint and a black paint, again of materials that are abundantly available, non-noble, non-expensive materials.
I will guess you're a proprietary formula of yours that goes on this, right?
Yeah, there are some
okay.
secret sauces to the company in there.
I had to ask.
And once you put this together, what you have there is a flat piece of ceramic. Guess what? The semiconductor industry has figured out how to make flat pieces of ceramic in extremely large quantities and bring down the cost time over time. And that is why we have seen the advantage of information technology gadgets, the consumer gadgets, including the PC, the price coming down very, very fast. On the very basis, the building block of our fuel cell are repeat elements like this. No noble metals. That's the one problem that we solved. What is the second problem I talked about? Hydrogen. Hydrogen not being a fuel. This is a high temperature fuel cell. At the temperature at which it operates, it does not care whether you need hydrogen or carbon. It can be any combination thereof, which is practically every fuel that you can think, from biofuel, renewable fuel to natural fuels to fossil fuels.
It can be green, but not necessarily.
It can take natural gas, and it'll be greener and cleaner than what you do today. It can be biogas, and it can be absolutely green.
So just to give a sense of how much power this might supply, a light bulb, my watch,
true.
I mean...
So when we started the company 8 years ago, this would generate about 2 watts. A very low voltage night lamp, if you want to think about, is what you could do with this. Today it generates about 25 watts, enough for one good light bulb in a room, one of these. And by the way, not like a solar cell, which will only power you when the sun is shining, or a windmill that will give you only when the wind is blowing. This is 24/7, 365. It's always on. And that's a very important thing with electricity, because we are in a world where we need to make hay when the sun is not shining. Okay.
You take those, you stack them up, and you put them in a cube, say, plus or minus this size, right?
Right.
And that runs what?
That would run a typical U.S. home.
Okay.
Not an Aspen home. You need a few of those. It would
thank you so much for coming.
It would run a typical U.S. home, and it would run typically 2 European homes or 4 Asian homes. That's what one single piece can run. And again, that's the chip. Again, think about your iBook or your PC, and there's a chip in there. That's the processor.
Right.
The stack is similar to the processor. There's a box around it, and that box allows the gas to come in, air to come in, things to work, cool, and pull electricity up.
The economic consequences then are mind-boggling, and I have 2 that I want to talk about. First of all, my thought would be, how much do I have to pay you to get one of those things in my backyard and then get off the grid? I mean, what's the commercially viable price for one of those things?
The commercially viable price is very simple. 99.9% of the electricity that we all consume, we get from the grid, and there's only one way we pay for it: cents per kilowatt hour. There's a meter put out there. There's electricity coming into you, depending on how much you consume, which is called the units, cents per kilowatt. Like kilowatt hours are the units. They measure the units, multiply it by cents. And it ranges in this country anywhere from 6 cents to 15 cents on a levelized basis, in this country, and the number is not very far away anywhere in the world. So in order for us to compete, we should not only offer the advantages of you being off the grid, the advantages of this being green, the advantage of it being more reliable. Why would this be more reliable? If the electricity to your home is coming through poles and wires, a tree falling on that pole, a big storm, hurricane, somewhere somebody doing something stupid, like they're digging a trench in a road and cutting the wire. You will not have power and you don't have control of it. Whereas here, this is right at your place. So you get reliability, you get control of what you have, and you have 24/7 access to it, and it's also greener. If we offer all those attributes, and by the way, make it grid parity, equal in cost to the grid or slightly lower, that's when commercially it can take off.
With the understanding that what you have now are industrial applications. You have them at Google, you have them at eBay, you have them at some other companies. I didn't hear you say a price for what it's going to be to get one of those in my backyard.
When we're able to build a box where it's going to cost, if you live in Southern California, so you're probably paying 14 cents a kilowatt hour. You should know.
My
Kai.
wife pays the bills. I don't know.
You should know, Kai.
It's true. My wife pays the bills.
And so so I would say that when we are able to get it below 14 cents a kilowatt hour reliably to you is when you will have it in your house.
Okay, so let me pick on myself here for a minute.
Right.
I guarantee I'm not the only person. Maybe I'm the only guy in the room, but certainly not the only person in the country who has no idea what he pays for electricity. Right. How do you get people to care?
That's extremely easy. It's extremely easy when it comes to the bottom line. If I come and tell you, I want you to do this because you will save so many pounds, so many tons of carbon dioxide, and your neighbor comes and tells you, you know what, Kai, it doesn't matter what you do. Those guys in India and China, they're just building a coal power plant every single day. Global warming is being caused by them, and it's not being caused by us. You're going to wonder what the heck are they saying. But if our sales guy comes to your doorstep and says to your wife, since you don't deal with it, she's obviously the decision maker. I'm gonna put this box. I'm gonna put this box. You don't have to do anything about it. Here's the meter. The meter looks exactly similar to the meter that you have. Whatever you're paying in your bill, I'll give you 10% below that. And by the way, I just want you to know that you're doing something good for the planet. Any questions?
Where do I sign, right? Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
where you need to be.
Okay, so economic question number 2 then is whether it's Aspen Light and Power or Consolidated Edison in New York or Southern California Gas and Electric where I live, how are they not going to look at you, a smallish startup on their scale, and say, that guy is taking money out of my pocket. I am going to crush him.
Let's look at the analogs. Okay. Let's go to the computing industry. Those IBM, Wang, DEC. Some names we remember, some names my son won't even know who they are, right?
I don't know. He's a bright kid, though.
So there were some who adopted the new technologies that came along and correctly defined who they are and adopted new technologies and survived and flourished, not just survived. There are others who stuck to their old ways and did not believe in any new technology and became dinosaurs, which is what they need to become. So the question for a utility would be, are they in the business of owning poles and wires? Is that how they define themselves as a business? Or do they define themselves as a service organization that gives you the cleanest possible, affordable electricity in the most reliable fashion and provide you a service and collect a charge for that service and make a profit? The ones that see it the latter way will do extremely well and will view us as a friend. The ones that don't adopt things like what Bloom does, not just ours, things like what we do. There'll be other things that will come along. My guess is they will not survive. That's one way to think about it. The other way to think about it is the utilities don't build the big monster power plants that they today get their electricity from. It is somebody else. It's a General Electric. It's a Siemens. Somebody building it. So why is Bloom building a box and helping them any worse off? In fact, they have advantages to using our box. What are the advantages? They don't have to sync capital cost into transmission distribution by buying our boxes and servicing you. That is something that they have to have on the books, and it takes a long time for them to recoup that money.
So you would make a sales call to Consolidated Edison in New York and say, listen, I think you should buy, whatever, $3 million worth of our boxes, put them in a substation in Queens, and then run it that way. So they're customers of yours.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah. All right. I want to ask you about something we talked about last night. In this age where we are all about conservation, where you got to turn off the light bulbs and boost the air conditioning up to 72, and really you got to save the planet, so you got to save electricity. Your philosophy on that is we need more energy, man, not less.
No, absolutely.
Explain that.
There's no question about it. It is brain dead simple. I'm not. Don't mistake what I'm saying for go waste electricity.
Right.
I'm not one bit for wasting anything. Wherever you're wasting, that's the low-hanging fruit.
Yep.
Don't do it. But this concept of negawatts, okay, negative megawatts, that applies to people who have gigawatts and can afford to bring it down. There are 2 billion people who have 0 watts. What are they going to subtract from? What do you subtract from 0? Just doesn't make sense. And why do they need electricity? Why do they need power? For the same reason you and I do. Without clean electricity, they don't have clean water. Electricity is the capacity to do work. Work is what creates economic output. If these people need an economic life, they need energy. 3 billion people needing energy. The country is going to need more energy. The planet is going to need more energy. And there's nothing in science that I have read, and if anybody knows differently, tell me, that you need to associate an electron, which is electricity, to carbon, which is what you're worried about. That just happens to be the old-fashioned bad way that we used to do it. That doesn't mean that in the future that's the only way to do it. Let's not somehow couple the two because of how we did it in the past. This world will require a lot more energy. And when we have a lot more energy, we will have a lot more sustainable planet because we can recycle most of the materials that we use today. The difference between throwing something away and recycling it is whether you have abundant, affordable, sustainable energy. If you have abundant, affordable, sustainable energy, you will recycle most of what you have, including water. So it will solve a whole bunch of problems. So where is all this energy going to come from can be another question. And we need to remember that energy is not a zero-sum game.
Explain that a little bit. We were talking about that last night.
Just in the 1.5 hours or 1 hour and 15 minutes that we will all spend in this room, the sun would have shown enough photons on this earth to keep the entire planet powered for 5 quarters, 15 months. We just don't know how to capture all of those, I grant it to you. We just don't know how to convert that. But just think about it. In 1 hour, it's enough for 1 year for this entire planet to have energy. Just from sun. And then you got the wind, the tides, the geothermal, all that other stuff. Okay? So energy is not a zero-sum game. We got plenty of it out there. We just need to know how to harness it. And we also need to know how to harness it in an affordable manner. Can we? There's no reason why we can't. Will it take time? You better believe it. It's a big scale problem. But we have started. We're going to see the solutions.
8 years ago, you went to John Doerr, Kleiner Perkins, a well-known venture capital firm in Silicon Valley.
He's there in the audience.
And you, as you do when you go see a venture capitalist, you ask them to give you money.
Yeah.
And Kleiner Perkins is known for many, many things, renewable energy not at that point being one of them. What's the pitch? How do you get him and the people who've invested $400 million, $500 million in your company to see the financial light, if you will?
Yeah.
Why are you guys different?
I think John's better suited to answer this question, but I'll take a shot.
Sadly, you're sitting there. He's not.
I'll take a shot. The reason I went to them is also the reason why the pitch was what it was. When I looked at what they had done as a firm, over 3 decades, they had funded a company that created an industry of significance, whether it was biotech with Genentech, whether it was Netscape and the internet, whether it was Amazon and e-commerce, whether it was Google and search. There were new industries that were created through a thinking of this is the next big thing. And in my mind, I was convinced that this is the next big thing, even though at the time that I went there, Al Gore had not put his movie out, and we were not as aware of global warming. Oil was at $17 a barrel. Al-Qaeda had not attacked New York. So we were not thinking energy the way we are thinking about it today. But I could see this bigger global problem of this 2 billion people wanting to get on the inlet ramp into the highway of economic growth, and us sort of holding them back because we're not giving them affordable energy, which is a big sustainability problem in my mind. And what they look for and what innovators like me look for is disruptive big opportunities. So the key sell was, is this a disruptive big opportunity? So let's walk through that for a second. Right? A typical coal power plant at that point in time would produce 30% at best, 30% efficiency electricity. You take 100 calories of coal and you burn it, you get 30 calories of electrons right at that plant. And then you have 10% losses through the transmission distribution grid. So you end up with 20 calories of electrons from the 100 calories that you started with. At your home, you have an incandescent light bulb that puts out about 5% of the entire energy as light, so I can see your face, and the rest of it is heat. Okay, 5% of the 20% that went in. So it's less than 1 to 1.5% of why you need that electricity in the first place that you're getting from burning 100 calories. You're getting 1.5 calories worth of what you have. In any other business, if this is the level of efficiency you had in any other business operation, would you tolerate it? The answer is no. Yeah. Why did we tolerate that in energy? Because it was abundantly cheap. We in the Western society grew our economies when electricity was abundantly cheap. The way it was priced to us, maybe there were expenses from an environmental perspective, health perspective, all those things, but that's not how it got priced to us. We didn't pay for that directly. So that's what it was. So you see that, and then you see the world raising its standards and saying everybody is going to be competing for these limited amount of fossil resources. So the price of fossil fuels are not going to remain the same. So there's going to be tension there. Supply-demand tension, prices going up. There are technologies that we knew, if we break the code, we can get significantly higher efficiencies. So there you got a disruptor. If you make this disruptor happen, is there a really large market that you can capture? Guess what?
Yeah, give us some sense of that market. Start talking.
All of compute servers and everything associated with that at that point in time when I went to go make that pitch was $400 to $500 billion. Energy was a $5 trillion market to the T. Very few markets that you can go pitch to a venture capital and say, the market size starts with a T. And to me, people just look at that number and say, wow, that's big. I go, no, that's really small, guys. 5 trillion is really small. What do I mean by that? If you think of the energy market being 5 trillion, it is the equivalent of figuring out what the compute market was when IBM and Cray made mainframe computers. If you look at $5 trillion energy market and say that's the market, it's the equivalent of figuring out what the telephone market was, what the telecom market was when we simply had landlines. In 70 years, AT&T had a penetration of 21 lines for every 100 people. Cell phones in 10 years had 98 out of 100 people penetration. So when you have distributed energy like what we want to do, when you address the suppressed market, as well as a new market of these 2 billion people that will become consumers. This is a 15, 20, $30 trillion market.
I want to pick up on a line you had a moment ago, this issue of energy security, which we're now thinking about much more than we were in the days when you made the pitch to Kleiner Perkins. Before I do that, though, we are going to take some questions from the audience at some point, so be thinking about what you want to know and raise your hands, and we'll get you involved in the conversation. Seems to me that if everybody has one of these boxes in their backyard, or there's a substation relatively close by, you take care of the energy security issue because the grid is no longer vulnerable. I mean, we know from the blackouts we've had on the East Coast and from everything that we've read and seen about energy grid security, it's a huge vulnerability that even power plants, just to get ironic on you here for a second, if power goes down to a power plant, we're done.
Yeah. The economic disaster that could potentially come from disrupting our national grid will be significantly larger than the economic impact 9/11 had on us. There are enough papers written about it. You don't have to take my word for it. There are security experts that have written about this. So it's very, very large. So I want to address energy security from two perspectives. One from that perspective. The other also from a personal perspective as an individual. 1933, the first 5-year plan of the Soviet communism. Stalin stated, and it's a very famous quote, Soviet power plus electrification of the country is communism. Okay, Soviet power plus electrification of the nation is communism. It's command and control. Anytime you have a command and control centralized structure, you're not giving people the freedom. Out of grid, out of luck. Don't follow my rules. You're not going to get it. And very soon with your smart meter, I'm going to tell you when your wife can do her laundry. Otherwise, she's going to pay 10 times the price.
She does the bills, I can do laundry.
So
it works for us.
Southern California Edison is going to tell you and you can do it. So, an individualized distributed system is true democracy. Each one of those centralized things that you have is a shackle on your leg. It's a chain. And true freedom comes because you can walk with your BlackBerry. True freedom comes you can walk with your iPhone, with your laptop. Same thing. Personalized energy is going to be a lot more freeing, a lot more empowering, if I have to use the point.
Sure. So no pressure, but when? Right? You've had 8 years.
Yeah. Beginning to sound like my wife out there. So, look, I think we have done, for the last 50 years, major corporations, name them, whether it's a General Electric, a Siemens, a United Technologies, have been trying to crack this code with probably a lot more resources, a lot more employees. I'm very proud of my team that's done what they've done in a very short time. This is a short time for something as revolutionary as this is, in terms of inventing it. But for a startup, this urgency is the middle name. There's a clear sense of urgency. We are on a mission. We started this company wanting to change the world. Obviously, developing the technology and not being able to deploy it is more frustrating to us than to anybody else. But this is not software. I can't create the one patch and now make millions and spread it around. This is real building. This is real hardware that needs to get put together. We're not creating a company, we're creating an industry. What do I mean by that? There's a supply chain. These parts that are needed are specialized parts that need to be made for us. There are companies that we have to develop and grow that have to start making this. We are in the process of making it. It's extremely hard work, but we're very, very confident that we will get there. But it takes time to build factories. It takes time to develop these processes, time to train these employees and have them make what they need to make. But I'm willing to tell you, today when people talk about alternative energy, they talk about solar, they talk about wind, you never hear fuel cells.
Right.
10 years from now, that definitely will not be the case.
Do you guys have a PR problem then?
And,
I mean, right? Half the battle.
For us, it's the ultimate. PR does not matter as much to us as our customers do. We just obsess on our customers. What I can tell you is all the big names that you rattled off, they have tried everything else that's out there. And they've come to us, and they're very happy with our solution because it is a more comprehensive solution for what they need to do. And at the end of the day, it is getting those proof points, getting those economic affordability issues, which is what will allow us to scale. So we believe in building the foundation really strong so we can scale very fast when the time comes to scale, as opposed to just getting a PR. PR, as you know, if anything, people have said that we have been a PR machine after we did 60 Minutes. Prior to that, they kept talking about how secretive we are, and after 60 Minutes, Bloom is all about PR. So if people are complaining from both sides, I think we're doing something
there
right.
Strike the report. With these billions of people who want to come out of poverty and use those kilowatt hours that the rest of us use, with the issue of energy security, with the issue of sustainability, it does seem to me that there's a sense of urgency that we know we can't go on using energy and electricity the way we have. So how much time not Bloom Energy, but how much time do we have to figure out the issue of sustainability and energy as demand grows? From somebody inside that field.
That's a good question. When we look at the nonlinear shifts that have occurred in other technologies, this is what I'm going to look at to see the future. I'm going to look at the past to see the future. The penetration of things with very high value proposition that give people a better sense of comfort or a better lifestyle, be it the PC, be it the cell phone. It's actually caught on a lot faster than anybody would have predicted, if anything. So my guess is 10 years from now, we will not be as scared talking about this topic as we are today, because there'll be enough solutions. Why do I feel optimistic and confident about that? One, I'm an optimist.
As all good entrepreneurs are, right? I mean,
okay, I'll make that disclaimer. But I believe in the power of technology. The best minds have not focused on this issue until very recently, simply because this was not the biggest problem that we had to solve. Energy was cheap. It was abundant for what we were doing. Today, it's a very different story. The amount of money going into innovation in these areas is significant enough. And the third part, which is that huge market opportunity.
Money to be made. Right?
Money to be made. It's doing good and making good. I mean, what better could you want, right? So it's. I think we will have solutions in 10 years that make us look a lot better at where we are compared to how we are looking at the problem today.
I'm going to ask one more, and then I'd love to hear what y'all think. I'll get to you in a second, sir. I've been up here for a couple of days and away from the news, so I don't know what oil's going for now, but probably $75. Yeah. Do you still have a business if oil goes to like $30 a barrel?
We started the company when oil was at $17 a barrel. Oil has no bearing on us. When oil prices went up and down, your electricity prices didn't move. You can check with your wife on that.
I will do that. Man, I'm just giving myself up. Fair enough.
Until then, take my word for it.
I will
okay.
Do that. Sir, in the back, go ahead. I don't think we're on there, guys. Strategy.
Yeah. Thank you. We've seen a lot of very exciting energy-related companies come public over the last decade. Fuel Cell Technologies, Ballard, Capstone Turbine. A lot of times these really fantastic sounding products just don't quite live up to the lifetimes expected in the field. So what would you tell us about your current deployments in terms of the field life and the warranty you offer with the product, and what sort of feedback you're getting on that? Thank you very much.
Sure. Do you guys offer like money-back guarantees?
We offer a 10-year warranty on the product.
So what's the experience in the field?
So our longest fleet has been with our first customer, Google, for 2 years now. That's the longest that we have operated it. Our customers are extremely happy. We have delivered on the contract. Our early customers are repeat customers, which is, again, the best metric for us to figure out, are they happy with what we promised and what we delivered to them. There is a 10-year warranty that we offer on the product. We are confident that we can make the economics work to meet that contract, and offer a value proposition to our customers because it's an early product, because there are no accelerated life testing. There's no way of, if you take an automotive, for example, your shock absorbers, there is a technique with which, if you develop a new shock absorber, you can accelerate life test it very quickly. And before you put it in the car, say that it'll last that long. This is a brand new technology. We don't know what that accelerated life testing protocol is. So I can't tell you 100% positively that this is, this will last for 10 years, this will not last for 10 years. But we have enough data, empirical data coming from other angles using our science and technology that gives us the confidence that we can make our business model work with that 10-year warranty, which is our warranty to the customer. They don't have to worry about what will break or not break. And so far in the field, it's 2 years. I hope I've answered your question. Without
asking for internal deliberations and discussions, are you guys at all attracted by the prospect of going public?
That's one option for any company, but when you're building a very large company, going public is just an event in the life of the company. When the time is right, if that's the right thing to do.
Fair enough. Yes, in the back on the aisle.
I'm just wondering if there's any substance that's part of your fuel cell that is equivalent to the platinum that you were describing in the hydrogen fuel cell that might be rare and thus a limiting factor on large-scale production.
How much of what we do when we use our materials is we do a complete survey of the total availability of the material, and not just is enough available, but are they spread across enough geographically so we don't create a new Saudi Arabia for something. We have done that. But again, being an early company, even though they may be available in abundance, we need the supply chain to start getting those materials up for us, and we are in the process of getting that going. But there is no material here that is a noble or a precious metal that is available only in tiny pockets in very small places that have multiple uses, and suddenly we'll find ourselves in a gem.
That said, there are probably unknown unknowns, right?
Those are always hard to predict.
Yeah, well, boom. Thank you, Donald Rumsfeld. Yes, ma'am, right here, about halfway down.
Can you speak to the use of fuel cells in automobiles?
I don't believe in the near future that is a viable option. I will explain to you why. A diesel generator that you may have at a home that produces electricity for you, you can buy for roughly $1,000 a kilowatt. Okay, and that'll produce electricity for you. The platinum fuel cell that needs to go in the car, not these fuel cells. The platinum fuel cell, the kind of fuel cells that GM and Ballard and others were developing. They have platinum, and they're a lot more expensive. They're way up there, 10 times, 20 times more, depending on who's making and how much they're making. And your car engine today, to put out a kilowatt, again, I was talking about $1,000 a kilowatt. Your car engine today, made in Asia, the cost of making that for a kilowatt is about $20 a kilowatt. 20. If you have a way of bringing the cost of that fuel cell from there down, you'd rather stop here and be producing electricity and giving it to your home way before you go to the car, which is only $20 a kilowatt. So the fuel cell in the car is very, very far away for that reason. However, we believe that our boxes are the future gas station for the car. quote-unquote gas station. They're going to be electric cars. This produces electricity. And guess what? This produces direct current, DC electricity, which is what you need for your battery to charge. So it's a much better way of producing electricity from here, charging your car. So we call our boxes, the Bloom boxes, energy servers. They're home energy servers. When it's in a home, they're a office energy server when it's in the office. Not only will it give you your electricity, but it's also the gas station for your car, charge station for your car.
Yes, ma'am, on this side. Sir, in the shirt right there.
You did not, excuse me, you did not address the kilowatt hours that are developable in this small box in terms of normal electric consumption in a home. If they are produced, as you suggested, on the spot, then a whole industry of replacing your boxes with identical boxes comes into existence.
Sure.
And so I'm not so fast to rule out centralized production and distribution through the existing system. But what about these are not rechargeable in that sense. They're replaceable. Address that whole kind of question for us, please.
I'll try and see if I got your question right, and then I'll try to answer that, okay? So I think the first question was, you haven't addressed the scale of how much you can build and then the ability to replace the grid. I did not make the point, and I will emphasize this, it's a good point. I'm not saying we want to replace the grid, okay? What I'm saying is, just like your teenage son or daughter going to college, never in their mind will think about calling AT&T and getting a landline. It's only us people who are used to that still have a landline at home. Wherever new electricity is being used once this becomes standard, they will directly go to distributed generation and not put new transmission distribution lines. That's number one. Number two, in developing countries, which is where the fastest growth of energy is happening, once a technology like this comes along, just like you can't go to India, China, Bangladesh, middle of Africa, and ever see a copper line, landline, telephone wire, so all cell phone towers, you will only see distributed generation and you will not see the grid. Okay, that's the point that I'm making. The second point that you're asking is, does it have to be individual? Well, it can be microgrids. There are hybrids in between. Today, we still have mainframe computers, but they're called data centers, right? What is inside a data center? A bunch of little computers, bunch of little servers. So we are a stackable technology that way, very similar to that. So wherever you need large amounts of power, you'll be having multiple boxes, each having redundancy, being stackable, pay as you grow, just put what you need today, and buy the next one tomorrow, because the next one will be cheaper, better. There's a technology curve associated with it. This is how you'll grow even large-scale, like power issues, as opposed to somebody doing a survey of 20 years from now, how much power will you need? Let's take the next 10 years to study the environmental impact of that, and in the next 10 years, if we can do it, build a power plant, which is status quo.
May I have a follow-up
Yes,
on
sir,
that,
very quickly,
please?
if you would.
I'm sorry. I understand then the application of this in the developing nations of the world. In the United States, where we use distributed power, and we use alternating current, and these produce direct current, what is the application as a viable alternative for the United States with all of its trillions of devices based on alternating current and distributed power?
Good. So first, your presumption is wrong. The Bloom box puts out alternating current and very similar current to what is in the grid. So it is already built into our box.
Wait, didn't you say when we were talking about cars that that's okay?
So I'm going to get to that in a second. So our boxes today put out current where the customer has to make no changes, just connect the wires from us to the mains, very similar to how you connect the grid. They get 110, 220, 440 volts, DC, single phase, three phase, whatever they want. It's all built in, okay? So that's not an issue. Why would the customer in the US want to buy it? Multiple reasons. The grid is the weakest link in your always-on availability issue for all the reasons that we talked about. It's unreliable. A wire can go down for multiple reasons. Power plant can go down for multiple reasons. There's a phenomenal fraction of the US industry today that cannot afford it because there's an IT room that runs it. If you are a enzyme-making company, a gene-making company, you can't afford for few minutes, few hours of power outage because of in-process inventory. If you're a wafer fab, you can't afford that. If you're a hospital, you can't afford to have power down. If you're an airport, you can't afford for power down. If you're an old world steel mill running, the entire steel mill is run by a computer IT room that controls everything, and if that goes bad, it's not going to work. So what do these people do? They put Band-Aids. They have a backup generator. They have a UPS battery room. They have a flywheel. All these things take care of it. Our box obviates the need for buying all that capital equipment and keeping it idle 99.9% of the time, for that 1% of the time when the power goes off, and you try to start all these things that were idle, and very often, as you know, if you have not started something for a while and try to start it for the first time, something doesn't work for that, whereas we are always on. So there are multiple reasons why companies in the US use our boxes, from energy security to always on availability to lower carbon to lower prices.
What conversations have you had with energy regulators about this box? Because you can't just throw something on the grid and say, here you go.
Very good question. So in order to connect either to the PG&E grid or the Southern California Edison grid, there are very well-written rules by the PUC, which is the Public Utilities Commission, on what we need to comply with. So we have to pass all those tests, and UL, underwriters laboratory, has to approve it. We've gone through those approvals, number one. The second thing is, in order to operate in California, we have to pass the CARB, California Air Resources Board, in terms of our emissions being very clean. So we passed that. In addition to that, because it's a new device now, in every town, every city that we put it in, the city officials have to approve it, the fire marshals, everybody else has to approve it before we put it on. So it's highly regulated still. It's a permitting process we have to go through. But so far, we've been very successful in doing that. AC versus DC. I'm sorry.
Very quickly, AC versus DC.
Okay. So we natively produce DC power. We convert that to AC power to satisfy the needs. I'm willing to bet you the future of electricity is DC and not AC. Edison was right. Westinghouse was wrong. Okay.
What about Tesla? Wasn't Tesla in there somewhere?
Yeah.
Right.
But and so the reason is, look at what you do at home. Your cell phones, your mobile devices, your computers, they all run on DC. AC is getting converted to DC in a little box. Your LED lights, your low voltage lights, they're all DC. Everything converts from AC to DC. You're left with air conditioning and refrigeration. A DC motor works wonderfully on those things. There's absolutely no reason for a home to be AC when you have AC producing devices like the solar and fuel cell, which are your distributed generation. It's wasted energy. It's a legacy. It will change. It'll take time, like every big change. But the future homes are going to be DC.
Interesting. Yes, sir. On the aisle right here in the black shirt.
Will you comment on the consumption and refreshing of the fuel cells, please?
So how efficient are they, right? I mean, how much natural gas do you have to plow in there?
So we are in the mid-50s in terms of efficiency right now. So there is something called the lower heating value of the fuel, which is the amount of calories that you can get out of a fuel. And what you put out is AC electricity, not the DC, because today AC is the standard. So how many calories of AC electrons are you going to get compared to how much fuel value there is. When you divide those two, that is the complete efficiency. So we're in the mid-50s. The US grid today is in the high 30s, if you want to think about it, averaged out, high 30s. And then you have a 10% transmission distribution loss on top of that. So even if you use natural gas in our box, you get a 40-50% reduction in carbon just because we use less carbon fuel to produce the same amount of electricity that you need.
On this side. Yes, sir, right there with the beard on your left there, Azalea.
So you asked a couple times about cost. I didn't hear the question answered. What, pick a size, I don't care what it is, what would it cost? And is this something that is going to be available to beyond Google, the general public? And when?
Right now, our customers are corporate customers. That's what we are going to focus on initially. We have several corporate customers, and we have announced quite a few, like Google and FedEx and eBay and Walmart and others. You can stay tuned for others that you will see. I'm not going to make any customer announcements here.
Come on.
But these are boxes. For each one of them, they produce electricity from 9 to 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and they normally pay the grid from 13 to 15 cents a kilowatt hour based on where they are. Based on that economics, depending on the number of boxes that they put, they get a payback of anywhere from 3 to 5 years. What this means is everything that you spent your money on, you have recouped that money within the 3 to 5 years. The box is warranted with a life for 10 years, all inclusive. So for the next 5 years or next 7 years, depending on whether your payback is 3 years or 5 years, the only price you're paying for your electricity is the price of the gas that you're buying, and it's extremely economical. So you are really saving a huge amount of money. The reason a company like Walmart would buy what we do is not only is it environmentally good, but it's good for the bottom line. And that's the economics that works for them.
I'm sorry, where were you? Over on this side someplace. Anybody? Yes, sir, right there. Couple in. Thank you.
KR, can you speak to how your technology would compare to, say, cogen, combined heat power, which has a lot of the same attributes in terms of natural gas, lower greenhouse gas, lower delivered price per kilowatt. In addition, it has a thermal load which can offset, again, some of the additional electric consumption.
So how do you compare, right?
How do we compare? Look, cogen is a technology that people adopted out of necessity rather than out of what the customer wants. When we started the company, we thought about cogen and giving even higher efficiency. But when we went and talked to our customers, ultimately a company serves its customers. We found out that they don't like cogen. And we asked them why. Very simple. The amount of heat you need varies between day and night, varies between seasons, varies geographically based on whether you're in the northern latitudes or the southern latitudes. And sometimes it's an asset, sometimes it's a liability. The second thing is any of these devices produce a fixed ratio of heat to electricity. You can't tune it. And for any company, the chances of that ratio exactly being equal for them in terms of their heat load and electricity load is very, very hard. So we like to say it's like going and trying to buy hot buns and hot dogs. You get 8 of one and 6 of the other, and you wonder why they didn't figure out that you need 6 and 6 of each, right? So that's what it is, and it is a mismatch. And what we do is we take the heat that we produce, use it internally in a very clever process, and produce more electricity out of it.
Is
because
that
electrons,
the very clever process, is that sort of code word for we're not telling you what it is?
yes.
All right, just checking.
And what that does then is gives you very high efficiency electrons. And electrons are fungible. You want to heat your water, put an electric heater and heat it. You want to do air conditioning, do it. Electricity is the most fungible thing. That's one thing. The second reason we don't like cogen is heating, air conditioning, hot water, whatever you use the heat for, is a very specialized thing for every building. Now you have to go install your unit and custom do a project for every installation. We have a standard box. Within 2 hours, our people are gone from when they come. They just come, drop the box, connect, see you later. Okay? It's all taken care of. And that simplicity is what is needed for the future product. And the customer experience, don't minimize the value of the customer experience and the minimum amount of pain that you cause them through this process, the better off you are.
Right here in the front row. There's a microphone coming, ma'am. Hang on.
Oh, thank you. Is it a self-replenishing box? And if it isn't, where do you get it from when you run out?
The box, so if you just think of the box, think of a pipe. In this case, let's just think of natural gas, which comes to your home. That's how you use your cooking and your furnace for heating and stuff like that. That same tube connects on one end to the box. There's a little blower that sucks in air and gives oxygen in. And on the other side, you have wires that connect to your mains. As long as the fuel is coming in, as long as the fan is blowing the air, this device is getting fuel on one side and air on the other side. It's producing electricity. So this itself is not self-replenishing, but it is not getting used up. Okay? It's the fuel and the air that is doing what it needs to do. After a certain amount of time, this is not as effective. Okay? There's an aging process if you want to think about it. And we replace this main unit, everything else remaining the same. That's all built into our schedule of maintenance and warranty through the 10-year period.
You can slide the modules out and slide them in, right?
Yeah, that's what it is.
All right. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Let's wait for the microphone. Okay. Go ahead. There we go.
When you progress to the point that you pass beyond commercial into residential, and you drop one of these in as if it's a generator at my house in between the pole and the house, which is one of the reasons I'll buy it, because I still have the pole and the wires. Sure. There are two requirements. Obviously, I have to have gas. Suppose, and you're also talking about developing countries where there are not necessarily gas pipelines. Do you have to have a propane tank? That's one question. And the other question is your pricing model. Are you selling the box or are you metering the box?
Mm-hmm. Very good. They're both wonderful questions. And the first thing is, let me give you the short-term answer and the long-term answer for places where you don't have a natural gas grid supplying gas to you.
I'm sorry. You keep saying natural gas, but it can be anything, right? It could be biomass. It could be you name it. Okay. All right.
So,
sorry. Go ahead.
If you are a little village in Africa, okay, and you're doing agriculture, you can barely think of any plant from which you produce food where more than 5 to 10% of the entire plant mass is food. The other 90-95% is biomass. That biomass is a source of fuel. There's a small incinerator that you can have that can produce biogas called syngas, and that's a fuel to this. So not only is that agrarian village going to have its food, they're going to be able to take their waste and convert that to fuel, produce electricity, and have a microgrid, and have those hutments supplied with it. So that's one way to think about it. And another way, which is, I think, in a decade, we are hopeful that we will have this viable economically. Technically, we have proven this. Kai talked about Mars and where we got started. What we were doing initially on Mars was taking photovoltaic electricity from the panels on the lander rover on Mars, from the sun shone on the panels, electricity came in. Here, we broke water into hydrogen, stored the hydrogen locally in low-pressure bladders because it's just small amounts locally stored. And in the night when the sun went down, the hydrogen came with the oxygen and fuel and air now reacting to produce electricity. So this becomes not just a generating device, but also a storage device. So it's a reversible fuel cell. It's taking chemical energy and converting that to electricity or electrical energy into chemicals. So imagine in the middle of nowhere, as long as the sun is shining, you have 5 to 10 years from now, you have an advanced solar cell that's cost effective, a lot more efficient. We see that pathway coming along, that convergence. Not only will it produce enough electricity for daytime use for your home, but it'll have excess. That excess is breaking water up into hydrogen, storing it, running it in reverse, supplying the home. That's the killer app that completely changes everything. Okay, and this flat piece of ceramic is capable of doing that.
Last question I'll take as the moderator's prerogative to get you guys out of here on time, and I'm sure KR and I will be around later if you guys want to chat. So here we are. We've talked about this for an hour. You are obviously confident in your technology and confident in your production processes. What if you don't get it wrong? What if you do get it wrong? What if the unknown unknowns come up and you can't fix it, you can't solve it? Then what do we do? Where are we?
It's about entrepreneurs are considered risk takers, and the answer is true. Yeah, if we didn't have an appetite for risk, we won't be doing what we do. But what you need to remember is the reason we take risks is because we sort of thrive in figuring out risks, putting a portfolio of risk mitigation scenarios, and solving the risks. And we never see an obstacle as a showstopper. We see an obstacle as a curveball that we need to now, going from point A to point B, we're going to find out another path. So you build a DNA in a team that constantly is able to stare at a challenge, face the brutal facts, acknowledge what they are, and work as hard to find a solution around it. Getting to this point, in my opinion, had a lot more challenges than where we need to go. It's hard work going forward, don't get me wrong. But the team that we have built, the culture, the DNA of the company, is such that I can go home and sleep every night knowing that the best that can be done. And we believe that, as Hugo's quote, as I was walking out here, that was hanging in a banner, armies can be defeated, but armies of great ideas will never get defeated. So I'm an optimist, and we'll get this done.
KR, Sridhar, I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Guy, thank you.